Hey everybody, it's Nova here. We're here today with a video to reflect on the journey from ground runner to sub 90 runner in Titanfall 2. I recently got my sub 90 run and joined the sub 90 club, so I wanted to create a reflection video on that journey from where I started up until now. We're going to divide this video into a couple different segments. First, we're going to do a history segment, so what got me into Titanfall, what got me into speedrunning Titanfall, and kind of some things to do with that. The next segment will be the tricks, skips, and tech. This will be the tricks, skips, and tech that I employed throughout this run as part of the achievement. And then we're going to have a gratitude and dedication segment at the end, where I've got some extended thank yous that I would like to give out to certain people. So we're going to start with the history. I had no prior experience with Source games at all, or really any games with a lot of movement before I started playing Titanfall. I really struggled in my very first playthrough of this game. Even with things as simple as wall running, I was using the ghost runners everywhere. I really did not understand movement at all, because, like I said, I've never really played anything that had a lot of movement in it, so it was a real struggle. So this was in February of 2023. The game was gifted to me for my birthday, and by someone who said I might enjoy it. So like, okay, I'll pick this up and I'll give it a shot. And I actually did like the campaign. The story-wise, it's definitely one of the most, if not the most engaging FPS shooter campaign story that I've ever played. And I was really amazed by it. It was very well made. So fast forward to March of 24, so a little over a year later, I had done some Frontier Defense and actually played the campaign a second time. And a good friend, Breezy, comes in through a stream and saw me as the ground runner I was and was like, I can fix this. We'll talk about Breezy again in a minute. I've got some other things I'd like to add to that, but we'll get to that later. And then he started poking at me about the speedrun. I didn't really take it that seriously yet. It wasn't until October 15th, that I did my first official run of the game. And my final run time was 2 hours, 44 minutes, and 20 seconds. This is actually a retime from my 2 hour 46:08, because the timer, I didn't have the timer set up properly, so it didn't cut off at the end of fold. So part of the credits were played, so I had to do a bit of a retime. I didn't know any tricks, skips, or really any of the movement tech yet. That is important to this run. So that's where I started there. And of course, like I said, I broke my sub 90 on May 27th, just before the stroke of midnight. So that was 7 months and 13 days worth of time, 225 days, countless runs, both on stream, off script, many a reset, countless resets. It's too many to name. How many I've had, it's hard to even quantify what kind of number that would be. And I actually started running this game on regular, and I was not doing the gauntlet at first because I wanted to just learn the game, learn the rest of the campaign. And then I started playing on hard because I developed this aspiration to get sub 5 on master, or top 5 on master rather. And of course that's quite a big stretch for a brand new runner to be shooting for something that high, but so I was playing on hard to try and emulate master, but it turns out that really was not helping. So after following advice from TF2SR, and we'll get to them in a minute as well, they advised me to go down to standard, which is also known as easy. So I started doing that, and my run times were initially very similar. I went down to standard per the advice of the community to work on movement. And, you know, my times were initially pretty similar, but I just kept at it, on and off, kind of going throughout. So that's the history. Okay, so following the history segment, we are now going to get into the tricks, skips, and tech that I did throughout this run. Of course, this list is not all exhaustive of everything that you can possibly do in this run. I'm only choosing to highlight what I actually did during this run that I got sub 90 on. mostly for simplification purposes. So you can actually start in the gauntlet. There's a lot of little stunts and tricks that you can do throughout that can save you some time. You can do some frag boosting, you can do some EPG boosting. I didn't do any of those. You can skip the reload animation when you're picking up the gun. The timing can be a little bit tricky sometimes doing that, but... So there's not really much with the gauntlet that you can do, at least that I did, anyway. But starting on BT, there's a bunch of things that I started to do. The very first thing you can do is what's called drop pod skip. This is after Cooper hops out of the pod after having been injected with drugs before going into combat. You can start running and do a slide hop string, and you can actually cross the barrier where the drop pod falling would normally kill you. You have to start that string right away, though, or you're not going to get it. So that is important to note. And there's also a faster start to BT. There's a couple different things you can kind of wall run off of when you first bury Lastimosa. You can either kind of go back into the left and jump up there. Sometimes I hit it, sometimes I don't. Otherwise, there's a bar nearby that I've been wall running on. Otherwise, there's rocks over to the right as well. There's a couple different places you can do that. So there's a couple things right there at the start. And then there's river jump. This one is after you put the first battery into BT. There's that river that you can see behind him and off to kind of the right-hand side if you're looking straight at him. So you can head up there, you can do a bit of a wall run there and a jump, or I've seen some other runners kind of do a bit of a slide hop version, but it gets the same thing, it gets to the same place. Otherwise, you would have to go all the way around underneath the rocks to take a wall running route there. So a river jump can save you a good bit, actually. You do want to make sure that you are crouching, though, because there is an invisible ramp at the end of river jump, and if you're not crouching at that point, you will most likely get pushed off into the river and die, and then you'll have to restart. So just to bear that in mind for river jump. Otherwise, it's not really that hard, and it's a nice little skip. And then the main other thing that I learned in BT, other than just, the movement and the geometry, because that can be really challenging in this level, is a faster tutorial. So I learned from Breezy, my coach for this game, that if you kill the drones, the tutorial actually progresses quicker. So really, to do this, you kill that first group of specters like normal, and then when the second group spawns, what I do is I get the specters on the left, basically straight ahead of you, and then wait until the drones spawn, grab some bullets from the specters off to the right, and then hit the drones. And then very quickly after that, you will get access to the Acolyte pod. And this will allow you to finish the mission off pretty quickly, and then still prioritize the drones whenever they spawn, so then they don't get away from you. You do have a couple seconds to shoot them after they become visible, and that speeds up the tutorial quite a bit. And then you can go for the Brute, you can do the Expedition, Vortex Shield, Ping Pong, you can use your Electric Smoke, the Acolyte pod, whatever else you need to do to take care of the Brute pretty quickly. He's pretty easy to knock out fast. So that's BT. Alright, we are moving on to Blood and Rust. This is the level immediately after BT. The biggest skip in this level by far is Sludge Skip. Basically, what this skip allows you to do is to skip that giant fight in the room with the falling sludge, and you normally have to wait for the sludge flow to stop before you can reunite with BT. But with this skip, you can totally bypass that. So I'm gonna mention how to do it. So you actually start Sludge Skip further back than you think. It's in a tight hallway with a bunch of pipes. You can do some good tap strafing here to get through here quicker, but I'm still working on my tap strafes. They're not the greatest right now, but... So what I do is I delay the voice lines as long as possible. I pick the top options because they take longer for BT to speak out. So I like to start there, and then you go into the main room like you normally would, and you go for the button like you normally would, and then for me at this point, I C-Feb off the wall. We'll get to C-Febs in a minute. And I'll try to slide under because you're going for a thin spot with some pipes that you can latch onto and then wall run off of the butt end of the control room to get to BT. Otherwise, another method that I'll use if I don't feel my speed is high enough is I'll take a bit of a wall run off to the left-hand side and then kind of wall run along the control room. And then I kind of jump down, jump under, and I can still get to BT in time. If you get to him before he stops talking, you will want to wait until he does. Because if you embark him before he stops talking, the game will crash. So make sure he has completely stopped talking before you embark. And if you don't get there quick enough, he will run off, and you'll have to hide in the corner and hope he comes to you. Yeah, Sludge Skip is a very, very important time save, and it's actually relatively beginner-friendly. It's not terribly hard. Sometimes the jump timing can be a little tough because the area that you're getting into is really thin and really small, so it can initially be hard to hit, but once you do, it's really not that bad. Okay, so now we are going to be moving on to Into the Abyss. So I don't have anything for Abyss Chapter 1 because the main skip there is an out-of-bounds glitch, but I did not do that in this run. It requires very, very strong pilot movement to be able to actually save time with, so we're going to jump straight into Abyss Chapter 2. Two of the big skips in this level are Dome Skip and Told Spice. You start with Told Spice though. This is actually one of the very first tricks that I learned in this run. So for Told Spice, what you want to do is it starts on the second platform. So you can do your platform launch if you want. I usually like to because I think it's fun. And then on the second platform, you'll want to go to this specific corner and then do a double jump and then double jump again to get as much height as you can, going between the two walls. And then you can actually jump all the way to these rocks that are on the other end. And you can follow that around, and you skip a good 80-90% of the level and combat by taking this route. It's extremely dark though, so until you get used to it, I'm used to it by now so it doesn't bother me, but until you do, I would advise any newer players trying this to grab the fire stars near the Marvin before you drop down for the platform launch. You can use those to light your way until you kind of learn where to jump. And then you kind of do some good air strafing, and it's really, really easy. It's very beginner friendly, other than the fact that it's really dark, but otherwise it's not too hard. And then there is Dome Skip. This is another huge, huge save, a lot like Sludge Skip in Blood and Rust. So to do this, whether you did Dome Launch or not, I did not do Dome Launch in this one, but that's another thing you can do to save like 20-30 seconds. But to do Dome Skip, what you want to do is you kind of want to get into position right about here on this platform, and you let it come up, and then you start to jump over to that corner that I'm kind of showing right here and jumping to, and you'll glitch right through the wall. All you gotta do is crouch, and you can walk right through it, and then you just follow it around. And then once you get to the end, you'll jump in a specific spot on a panel. You don't want to jump too far though, or you'll fall off and die. And then with any gun, use the reticle and ADS to line yourself up. If you line yourself up in the right spot, it's really not that hard. It's very easy. It's just on this line down the middle. You will be teleported on top of the end level trigger once the last part of the dome is assembled. This is one of 2 spots in the campaign where the end level trigger is always active, so take advantage of that. It's very significant. And then in Abyss Chapter 3, there's a couple different things that I'll do here. There is Cylinder Skip. Sometimes I have trouble with this one, but basically what you're doing is you're hitting the button and then you're trying to maintain your speed until you get to the cylinder. You have a very, very thin window to get there, but what you're trying to do is get into the cubbies before the cylinder starts to move. And then you'll be spit out right at the other side. And you save about 10-15 seconds on the climb. So that's actually not too shabby. And then there is also the Hover Ash skip. Yes, you can skip Ash. For those of you who might be newer to the Titanfall speedrun, you can actually skip her completely. You don't even have to spawn her in, and you can finish it off. So I learned this one from Brian Otto in TF2SR. Hats off to you, Brian Otto, for your guide on this. But what you want to do is you want to dash, hover, and crouch at the same time. You have to be crouching or you will not be able to get up onto these pipes. And then you go all the way to the end, past the second ring, and then you want to look in a very specific spot, and then disembark BT. If the screen looks trippy, you did it right. So turn back and immediately re-embark BT before you fall into the abyss and die. And then you basically just hover onto this pipe here and follow it around. Once you get to the ending part though, you'll need to have both of your dashes, because what your goal is you want to get to a invisible wall and floor, and then you do the same thing you did at the start, disembark and re-embark, and then you can just follow it through to the end there after that. Alright, so now we are going to be moving on to the beacon. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the speedrun, why are we skipping effect and cause in this segment? Well, it's because I don't really know any significant tricks or skips for these. There's a lot of time gating in effect and cause across that whole segment. So that's why we're going to skip into the beacon. So beacon 1, you can start off, it's mostly an auto-scroller and time gated, but there's a couple cool things you can do. You can skip the fog, you can go over it. Supposedly you can go through the fog completely on the ground and you'll still get through okay, but I just prefer to go up, and then I can do a CFAB. And speaking of CFABs, I didn't mention this earlier, but to do a CFAB off of a wall, you want to do crouch and jump at the same time. For me, I have this bound to not only control, that's my primary for crouch, but I also bound a secondary key, C, as in cat, and the spacebar. So then I'll have my thumb knuckle on the spacebar, and to go into a CFAB, what I'll do is I'll press down my thumb on the spacebar first and then hit C, kind of at the same time. And CFABs, what they allow you to do is force the end boost off of a wall jump early, because otherwise you have to sit there for a while, and it's like almost 2 full seconds to get a boost. But with a CFAB, crouched forced end boost, you can force it early. You can even do it instantly and get a crouch kick. That's another bit of a higher level tech, but you can still do a CFAB and get a good boost as another method. So it's very handy. I am trying to upgrade that into crouch kicks, but I haven't quite gotten to that level just yet. But you can skip the fog pretty easily. It's not that bad. Do a largeless double jump if you need to get some extra distance. And then you can also skip a significant chunk of the stalker fight as well. So what you want to do is shoot the stalkers attacking the building. Those are the only ones you actually have to shoot to progress this. And then once you do, you can actually either keep hanging out where you are, or you can go back for BT if you wish. I've started doing that on my runs, because then if I get to him fast enough, I can pick up the Ronin kit early. Otherwise, I would not pick it up until Beacon Chapter 3. So that's kind of it for Beacon Chapter 1. Beacon Chapter 2 has a bunch of cool stuff that you can do. But what I did in this run was I had a different method for kill room. There is kill room skip, but that requires a good bit of damage boosting, and I'm not really that good at that. So I found an alternate way that still saves a good amount of time. So heading into kill room, what you want to do is hop in, and then when the 2 drones spawn up the middle, shoot them. They are the only enemies that you have to kill in that room. But then stay back a bit, because if you cross the trigger too quickly, the door will not open. But once you see the door open, you're good to go, and you can cross the gap. And then just head through, like normal. And then there's also this cool spot that I learned about during Mock March. There's actually an invisible wall underneath the fan right after Death Warp. And it doesn't extend down forever, but underneath the fan, right by where the arc tool is, there's actually an invisible wall down there. And you can wall run on it and not have to do the manual stair climb, and then you can just, you know, whack or shoot the Marvin, steal the Arctol, and move on. So that's pretty cool. And then there's also heatsink skip. This is a big one. This can save at least 15-20 seconds because you're not walking through that room. So to do heatsink skip, you're kind of going back through with the Arctol like normal, and then once you get to the area where the heatsink part is, I slow down a bit to jump up on the railing because I don't want to fall off and die. And then you hop up onto this panel and then do a CFAB off of it, and then do some air strafing, lurchless double jump, and you'll cross the gap. You may have to mantle on the railing, but that's okay. That's still a success. And then make sure you dip into that room for a fraction of a second before you move on. If you do not do this, you will face an invisible barrier at the end of the level, and you will not be able to finish. So it's very, very important that you do that when you do heatsink skip. And then in Beacon Chapter 3, this level used to be the bane of my existence because Super Fastball was notoriously difficult for me to get consistently. I've been much, much better at it recently, ever since I watched Bladen's 2022 tutorial. Hats off to you, Bladen, for that, for helping me with getting a better route for the start of Super Fastball. Hats off to you, my friend. So a shout out there. And Super Fastball is a lot of fun. You can fling yourself much farther than normal, but to do that, you need moon boots. We gotta back up a little. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. Little antsy, aren't I, today? So, to get moon boots, and you can do this in a bunch of different places. It's basically any time after you get Brute. So you wedge yourself under a surface, hover, be pushing into it, and then disembark. If you do it at the right time, you will have low gravity for the rest of the mission. It's pretty pog. And it's very, very important for Super Fastball. It's actually required. So you'll definitely want to get moon boots if you're going to be doing this. And then Super Fastball, like I said, it used to be the bane of my existence. You want to be holding a neutral position, so A, D, and space once you get into BT's hand. You know, he does his scan. And then you want to let go and start strafing. Do a lurchless double jump. Kind of jump off of that railing where you would get a kill barrier, run into a kill barrier, and then kind of just follow it. You're going to be going at a pretty insane speed, so you'll definitely want to be careful with your air strafes, because you don't want to turn too quickly or you will lose a lot of speed. This one can be kind of tricky sometimes. It's going to take a lot of practice to nail this one. And then towards the end of Beacon 3, I started learning a technique called Discount Tesco, or Poverty Tesco Meal Deal. So this one is kind of unique. I didn't realize this fight was an auto-scroller until recently. So the goal is you start by killing the grunts underneath with a gravity star, and then you head over to BT like normal. And so then when the Reaper spawns, you'll want to keep track of that. I have been told you need to wait 55 seconds after it spawns. Obviously you want to kill it ASAP. And then after you kill it, you'll want to target the grunts specifically. And once you have killed them all, put yourself into the corner to start climbing up the beacon dish. And then once that 55 seconds has passed, kill the stalkers. If you keep killing the stalkers, more will spawn. There is a spawn cap, so you can actually manipulate the spawns a little bit with Discount Tesco. And you can get done with the fight almost 10 seconds quicker as a result. And then you just climb the beacon dish like normal. And then this last one that I'm going to talk about is something I'm going to call Richter Sushi. I learned this from Doki. Hats off to you, Doki, if you're watching this. So with Ronin and Richter, so the normal technique is to go for Richter Barbecue, but for me, Richter likes to move, so I can't really do that. Historically, I would use the Ion Laser Core and Viper Snake Splitter glitch, but Ronin is faster by a mile. So to do this with Ronin, you'll arc wave him, shoot once, activate the core, you know, whack the heck out of Richter, and then shoot him to finish him off. It's very, very quick. So it's very handy as my new backup if I can't do barbecue. And then there's Elmo Clip. I just call it Elmo because I think it's funny. You can glitch BT through the wall here. And then that's just the end of the level. There's just an ending cutscene. Alright, we are now getting into the end game. This is going to be digging into Trial by Fire. There is a lot of optimizations on a lot of stuff you can do here. One of the big things is you can actually glitch through that wall in the beginning of it. You can take Ronan out, use the sword block, look down, take less damage going through it. There's actually a very specific technique for the fight here, but it's cool. You can skip that wall and you can get right behind the enemy lines and basically just nuke them with Scorch. Pretty much, Scorch is very, very efficient in this scenario for taking out large clustered groups of Titans. And then shortly after this, after you get Pilot You're With Me and run through the door, there is a Titan trigger skip that's actually really easy. I didn't even know it was a thing until somebody pointed it out to me. I forget exactly who it was. But you can actually go off the side after you kill that one Scorch. And if you go far enough to the right, you will avoid the spawn trigger, and then the double Scorch and North Star that normally spawn in this segment will not. They will be completely absent. So that saves you a good bit, good bit of combat. And then you kind of just follow through the end like normal. Alright, so now we are going to be moving into the arc. There are some crazy stunts you can do here, like Barker Skip. I didn't do it in this run because it's incredibly inconsistent. And, you know, damage boosting and all that crazy stuff. So the main thing I'm going to be talking about with Arc is the Viper Ion Snake Splitter glitch that I briefly mentioned during Beacon Chapter 3. This is a big spot for it. So with Viper Snake Splitter, you actually want to start with North Star, and you want to get a shot off on Viper while he's in his initial core. And then once you've gotten that initial shot off, swap to Ion, aim the laser shot, go ADS, fire the laser shot, stay ADS, and start shooting with the splitter rifle. You will notice that the damage is significantly higher than it normally would be. This glitch does reset upon reload, so just to bear that in mind, you will have to activate it every time, but it's very, very consistent and very, very reliable. There is a chance you could kill Viper too fast and then something else happens and you have to mantle back in. I've yet to have that happen, but I have seen it by some runners. Alright, and last but certainly not least, we've got Fold, the final level in the run. One of the most intense levels, I believe, in this run. Maybe because it's endgame? I don't know. But I love this level. I am in love with it. There's tons and tons of stuff we can talk about here. So one of the first things is, you know, you've got your starting segment with the Smart Pistol. You go get BT. Plug that data core back in there. And then one of the first things you can do is something called Snuggle Core. So there's a bunch of Titans that spawn right after you get him. And with Legion, you do have the drill shot in long-range mode. So you can actually line up a bunch of the Titans and the shot will continue to pierce. And if you hit enough of them, you will get your core instantly or near instantly. You may have to shoot, depending on how much of your core you got left. But then run through with Ronin, you know, phase dash when you need to, like normal. And then there's this rock up ahead that you can actually climb on. I missed it on this run, sadly. I fell down. But you can completely cross that gap. Or, not the gap, you can completely climb the fence. So I had to go around for this run in particular. It was actually the first time I think I missed it in quite some time. But anyway, and there's also door skip. So you come up to the door, and you want to stand back a little bit, but then you can disembark BT and just kind of follow through as a pilot. This area is very, very risky. You need to be careful because grunts can just randomly show up, block you, punch you, etc. And then there's the rocket specters at the end. You'll want to save your Smart Pistol shots for them if at all possible because they are 2-shot. So you want to make sure you have a full clip if at all possible. And then now we're going to get into a triple combination. We're going to do Fizzy Sloan, Pre-Charge, and Andy Shot. I actually missed Pre-Charge on this run, but I will explain how to do it because it's tied very closely to Fizzy Sloan. They're very interconnected. So for Fizzy Sloan, this is basically a technique where you're rapidly swapping Titan kits as quickly as possible to take Sloan down. So at the start, you want to start with Ronin, dash twice towards her, arc wave, shoot her, empty your clip, swap to Brute, shoot her until she warps out. And once you start seeing her kneel down, swap to Scorch, look in the left corner, and then you can spawn manipulate the Titans into that pit. Jump in there, throw it on Incendiary, look up, activate it with your heat shield, which dupes it, shoot the Scorch in front of you, and then heat shield him until he dies. I learned that part from Chill Spirit because that Scorch kept getting away from me, and I was having a hard time killing him. So Chill Spirit suggested that, and it's worked ever since. So hats off to you, Chill Spirit, for that one. So then the next thing you want to do is you want to look into the corner nearby because you want Sloan to spawn there. Throw down your firewall and then kind of walk into her. She should start walking backwards through it, but sometimes she'll get goofy. Kind of depends on what she feels like doing that particular day. And then shoot her until she goes out again. Swap to Ronin. You don't want to activate your core immediately because then you'll lose too much of it. So you want to wait slightly. But then you want to kill the Reapers in succession with one broadsword swipe each. With the sword core, you will kill them in one shot. You lose a bunch of it though, so you kind of need to go after them in quick succession. And then swap back to Scorch when you're done, and then barbecue her to kill her off. Now, Pre-Charge is very closely tied to how fast you kill the Reapers, but there is a bit of RNG to it as well. It's not 100% consistent, even for the top level runners. So, but it's very closely tied to how fast you kill the Reapers, though. And then for Andy Shot, what you're doing is you want to save a core, swap to Ronin if you're not already on him, and activate the sword core, and then immediately start pulling the arc injector. Once you pull it out, Cooper will spawn with the smart pistol inside the cockpit, and you'll be able to, once BT's ocular system comes back online, you can shoot Blisk. And you save like 38 seconds of dialogue, at least in English. I'm not sure in Chinese, but you save a lot of dialogue. And then you just kind of go through the finale. Go through that last part, guide BT in, he chucks you, and then it's just endgame from there. Alright, and last but certainly not least, my friends, we've got a gratitude and dedication segment of this sub-90 reflection. First off, I want to recognize TF2SR Titanfall 2 speedrunning. This is a dedicated Discord server and community for all things speedrunning Titanfall. They have a really, really dedicated community and countless resources for runners of all skill levels. Even for me, as a beginner, shortly after I began speedrunning, I joined in. I was welcomed very much so, even by Clip. Yes, Clip, if you're watching this, you were one of the first people I ran into. And you were very welcoming to me, even as the world record holder. You know, new people joining the grind. It was a really good thing there. Many of you guys contributed to my success, and I'm speaking right to you as a whole. Some of you contributed very significantly. Others of you made smaller contributions, but regardless of the size of the contribution you made, as a whole, I'm extending my utmost gratitude to all of you guys out there. I want you guys to keep doing what you're doing, keep welcoming those new runners, keep encouraging them, keep providing those resources to them. Titanfall 2 deserves a lot more love, and we need more people that are willing to explore everything in this game and what it has to offer, speedrunning or not. Alright, and my second point of gratitude that I would like to make here is to my YouTube community. You guys know who you are. Those of you who have been there for a lot of the speedruns, cheering me on for the ups and the downs and the everything in between. You guys kept encouraging me as well. Lock in, Nova, was the favorite term, the favorite phrase that you guys would use with me. You guys really played a big role in encouraging me to finish runs or at least get farther before resets. You guys taught me a lot about limiting resets, especially in that sub 90 blitz that we had right before I got it, to catastrophic time losses only. It really helped me complete more runs and just get more practice in the game, because it was really tough that last week or two before I got sub 90, because I was so close. I was just on a blitz and I wanted to get it so bad. And you guys played a very significant role in keeping me going on it. I would like to give a particular shout out to Ryer the Kaiser, aka Ryer. I speedrun Deep Rock with Ryer. That's actually one of the first games I truly got serious with speedrunning, was Deep Rock Galactic. And Ryer being a fellow speedrunner, it was particularly helpful having him in the community, because as a fellow speedrunner, he understands the frustrations of being so close to a goal or having something you really want sitting right in front of you, and just chatting with him about all of that helped me keep my head on straight. And all games, regardless of what it is, when you're speedrunning, have some core concepts involved. It's a bunch to name here, but for those of you who have speedrun multiple games, you will understand this. That even games that are completely different from each other, like Deep Rock and Titanfall, couldn't be a further 180. Like, there are some things in both that they do share, despite being very different games. So hats off to you, Ryer, especially, for being there for me, just as a fellow speedrunner. Okay, everybody. Well, I did call this segment the Gratitude and Dedication segment. Where's the dedication part? Well, we're doing it right now. I am dedicating this run to you, Breezy. Yes, I'm talking to you. I am dedicating this sub 90 to you. It really was because of you that I started speedrunning this game in the first place. I like to say that you poked at me. You're like, hey, did you know you can do this? Or this? Or this? And you started showing me things. You started showing me movement tech. You started showing me some of the tricks and skips that you knew. Yeah, I'll never forget when you first found me through the stream, and you're like, I can fix this. You saw me as the ground runner I was, and now I'm a speedrunner. A proud sub 90 speedrunner. You coached me from the ground up. I did not even really have much of an understanding of air strafing or slide hop strings. Like, you really had to teach me from the ground up. You got the patience of a saint, man. And you've even had to show me a lot of stuff more than once. Some of it still hasn't stuck yet, but you know what? I'm gonna keep at it. So I'm dedicating this run to you, Breezy, my coach. So this is the sub 90 reflection. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the exploration that we had here. I will catch you guys in the next any%. See you then, everybody.
CT，我们有办法脱身吗？
计算中。协议3，保护体域。
你在做什么？
相信我。
富伯，我们刚失去 BT 的讯号，只差一点。富伯，我在你的抬头显示上标好坐标，撤离点可能在空中，这边没有可着陆的地方。
而且如果我飞越这片狼藉，你最好准时出现在那里。
铁玉，快走！我在追踪你，继续前进。就要到了，快点，快点！富伯，快跳！
看到了。
Sub 90! 9!
巴特，快到我们
We made it! Sub 90! It's finally fine! Just before the stroke of midnight on May 27th, 2025, Sub 90 has been achieved.